Okay, so again, we're looking at how Weber understands the rise of rational capitalism. We've rooted this in the Protestant Reformation. This is where he sees the sort of historical moment of this change, of this creation of this new religion and new way of being religious that becomes embodied in a particular Protestant ideal type that's rooted in three basic elements: the calling, predestination, and worldly asceticism. And I just want to point out here that there's sort of the pinnacle of this in terms of Protestant theology is what is known as Calvinism. So this rooted in the ideas of John Calvin, and this links forward in time to the Presbyterian Church. But Calvinism is the sort of ideal type of the ideal type, if you will. It's where all of these three basic elements really come together, and you can see them at play. And it is at the time of Weber the most dominant form of Protestantism in Western Europe. And so this is how Weber views Protestant theology. But now, how does this then generate or create the Protestant ethic that then generates and creates, or how does this link up to rational capitalism? So let's put all of this stuff together. The first thing is how does the Protestant theology that we've laid out create this new spirit of capitalism? Because for Weber, the way in which this produces rational capitalism is by transforming the way that individuals work, operate, understand themselves, engage in the world in such a way that a new form of capitalism is born. So how does it actually go about creating this new spirit of capitalism? Well, let's put these things together. There's the intertwining of the calling with predestination that produces this, right? There's an intertwining of this new focus on a duty that's engaged in the world, a duty you have ordained by God that you're going to have to work in and day out, right? And this is going to be the way in which you can convince yourselves and those around you that you are a member of the elect, that you are predestined to go to heaven, right? Because you work in your calling day in and day out, this transforms who you are. And Weber talks about this as creating new historical persons. It creates a set of people who are fixated on their calling, who are fixated on performing their occupations to the best of their ability, right? So now you have a set of people who are trying to convince themselves that they're going to go to heaven, and do this by engaging in a methodically in their own work, right? Methodically engaged in their own work to increase profit. Now, what this does is it creates a new set of business people and a new set of workers that Weber ideal types in the Protestant ethic as the industrious worker and the kind of methodical, rational business person, right? They're engaged heavily in their calling, right? Let's say they're business people who are creating maximum profits for themselves. But what does the worldly asceticism mean? It means that they cannot engage their newfound profitability by buying new things, bigger houses, the bigger and better buggy, if you will. Let's take the historical moment seriously, right? You cannot engage in it by buying up more alcohol for yourself. That's off the table because you're having to deny yourself from these worldly pleasures. So what can you do? You have to reinvest those profits. You have to reinvest what you have back into the economy. And this is the key thing that makes rational capitalism take off. Right? We've restructured social action in the economy to produce a set of people who are methodically engaged in their calling. They're creating more and more in the world, more and more goods, more and more profit. but they have to take that profit and reinvest it back into their businesses. Right? Okay. Right, so this generates a new spirit in which people are engaged in pursuing their calling and then reinvesting the profits from their calling back into the economy. So let's then summarize the whole thing, what we have got. The Protestant Reformation, this historical moment, created a new set of ideas. Those ideas are embodied in Calvinism, right? The dominant form of Protestantism in Western Europe at the time. So we've got a whole new set of ideas that come out of this critical historical moment of the Protestant Reformation. This new set of ideas creates a methodical, rational way of orienting action in the economy. The calling and predestination join together to create this new methodical, this methodical way of engaging in economic activity. That is to create the industrious worker, right, who works very hard at what they do in their occupation, and the methodical, rational business person, right, who focuses in on maximizing profits for the sake of maximizing profits. And so now you have this new set of people who are creating more things, who are having more profit, but they're forced because of this worldly asceticism to reinvest their profits, back into the world. All right? And so, because of this becomes the lever, as Weber sees it, that generates this new form of capitalism, and that it's why at this historical moment in this place we see this form of capitalism taking off. And so he writes in the Protestant Ethic a very critical way of understanding this. When the limitation of consumption, that is worldly asceticism, is combined with the release of acquisitive activity through the calling and predestination, the inevitable practical result is obvious: accumulation of capital through the ascetic compulsion to save, right? And that is rational capitalism in a nutshell. So I want you to see Weber's real argument here is that this new form of capitalism emerges out of this new subjective orientation in the economy. Right? So when you put all of this together, it creates these new historical persons, and it's through this transformation of their subjective understanding of the world, right? See Verstehen in action, right? Through their new subjective orientation in the economy, that rational capitalism can and does, Weber argue, take off in the West. So that puts together all of the pieces of the puzzle of the Protestant ethic and the spirit of capitalism. I encourage you to go back and rewatch all of these videos to make sure you get all of the nuances and get a full understanding of exactly what Weber is arguing here.